Good afternoon, YouTube viewers and subscribers. So on my table today is my Generation 1 Saito FA-65 engine. Now I make an emphasis on Generation 1 because this first gen Saito 65 actually incorporated a completely different carb than all other Saito engines aside from the very first generation 120, in that it has an air bleed carb. Now these engines can be quickly and easily identified by the way this throttle arm looks. And I'm probably going to go ahead and zoom in here and just try and keep things in frame. But obviously it's got an air bleed hole here, and I've got the screw removed because that's kind of the purpose of this video. This was an engine that was given to me as part of payment for some services for working on an engine, and it was complete with the exception of not having a high-speed needle valve assembly. Now, because this is a Generation 1 engine, the high-speed needle valve assembly is very different than most modern or all modern Saito spray bars, and I don't have one here to show you exactly. I have another one of these engines down below, but I don't feel like digging it out. But I want to talk to you or show you first about this. Now, this carb has your standard opening in it, but as you see, it's solid here, so there's no spray bar that actually goes through there, and you don't have a spray bar that goes in to the adjoining mechanism like this, where the idle mixture screw is over here. So how this is done is if you take this barrel out, you'll see that there's a groove cut in it that is narrow and then gets wider. And you're saying, well, where the hell does fuel even go in here? Well, if you have to look really close here, right up there you see that little slit. That's where fuel enters the carb. So the way that the spray bar for these engines is different, and by the way, I've been looking for a spray bar for this engine for over 2 years and they are just non-existent. I mean, the part has long been discontinued and these things are impossible to find. So I did get a bunch of Saito parts a few weeks back, and in the parts was numerous spray bars for various other engines of various sizes and everything, and I figured, well, I'm going to try one of those generic spray bars out. And this is what a modern spray bar looks like. It screws into the throttle body here, and it's very wide and open. Now if I unscrew this throttle or the high-speed needle, you can see it's just completely hollow in there. And the way this works on modern Saito engines is that this needle actually kind of engages in another spray bar assembly that kind of meters the fuel. Where on this engine, that's not how it works at all. The spray bar on this engine looked very much like this, except this end was completely covered with the exception of just a small hole that allowed the needle to go in. So all it did was, instead of engaging in another half of the spray bar, all it did was meter the fuel right through that hole. So what I did initially was, I didn't think it was going to work, and it didn't. I put just one of these things on there just like that, and I ran this engine, and of course it didn't run at all. I mean, it ran, it would get up to about maybe 6,000 RPM, but you couldn't lean it out any more than that because there's just still too much fuel going in here. And this isn't infinitely deep, so you get to a point where you start turning this high-speed needle in and it starts to butt up against this too. So that was a problem. And this is just another spare spray bar I've got just for demonstration purposes. So what I thought about was modifying the one that I had already put on here, and my grand idea was take this thing off, take the high-speed needle out, and let me see if my camera's gonna like me zooming in like this. And I filled this with JB Weld, my standard JB Weld that's impervious to solvents and works up to 500 degrees. Just your standard 2-tube JB Weld. And what I did was I mixed up a very, very small portion of it and just kind of very lightly put a little bit in there. I wasn't making it go very deep or anything at all. And I just put it in there, and then I just sat this thing on a piece of glass and let it cure for a couple hours. I wanted the JB Weld to firm up enough, because my idea was, no, I didn't drill that hole. My idea was that I punched that hole with this. So I had to let this firm up just enough so that it wouldn't poke all out when I screwed this in, but it was still loose enough that this needle could actually go through and poke a hole through there. So I waited, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours or so. I kept checking on it. And what I did was I put 3-in-1 oil all over this needle. That way the JB Weld wouldn't stick to it. So I just 3-in-1 oiled that and just screwed this thing in and made it poke out. I screwed this thing all the way in. So it was poking out just like that. And then very carefully, with a razor blade and my magnifier on, I just kind of made sure that all the JB Weld came off that needle, and then using a motion like this, I just kind of flattened it out again. And I left it like that for it to fully cure. Now I think this thing is fully cured now and it's ready to be tested. But as you can see, hopefully my camera will focus on this. What I can do here is I can actually attach a fuel line to this, and I can blow in there, and when it's like this, just protruding a little bit, I can't get air to go through there. As I open it up a little bit, now I can start feeling air. So it seems like this should work. Now you may say, well, why would you use JB Weld on this? Well, it's going to be impervious to fuel, nitro and that kind of thing. At least I'm pretty sure it will be. But this is not an area of the engine that gets hot at all. In fact, this area is actually very cool because of sucking air in and the mixture of the fuel. This is actually the coolest area of the engine as it's operating right here. So I have high hopes, and I had to take my air bleed screw out just so I could rotate this in and out without actually having to remove the carb. So I have high hopes that this will run, but as it was, this engine was not running at all. I mean, it was running, but you could never fly with it. I mean, it would idle. It wouldn't even idle down before it would just die out because it was just too rich. No matter what, it was too rich. So anyway, the next video on this particular engine will hopefully be the run video and success of this, because this could be kind of a good thing for those that might have the same issue I have, where you got this nice Saito engine and it doesn't have an operational spray bar and you can't find one. So this engine was destined to just be a parts engine until I came up with this idea. So we'll have to wait and see if this idea actually works. Thank you for watching.